Alright, my name is Rebecca Streetman. I'm going to be the orator for this evening, and this is my audience, Sam and Viola. Alright, let's get started. Every day, we encounter things that have made our lives easier or more convenient. We can honestly say some things have bettered our lives or enhanced our lives. Like, for instance, a microwave. I don't know if most of us could get by without one anymore. I know I personally have stopped and thought, who made this great idea? Who came up with this really great idea and made certain things possible along the way? Like I'm sure many other people have stopped and thought about every once in a while, maybe even yourselves. So for a moment, I want to talk about Benjamin Franklin, a historical figure most of us know about, who was a true founding father that made some of the greatest contributions this country's ever seen, and for society itself. So I want to talk briefly on a couple of his inventions, some of his civic improvements that he helped to organize, and how as a politician, along being a politician, he was able to contribute largely to our country. First of all, just to give a brief introduction of Benjamin Franklin, he only had a couple years of education in his entire life. Literally like 2 years. And because he loved to read so much and he loved to write so much, even after he was forced to get out of school to help take on the family business, which most people had to do in the 1700s, he was able to keep up with his education. Reading, writing, he would constantly want to take things apart and figure things out, see how things work, and he ended up being a very smart man. So first of all, his inventions, one of the most famous things that he's done and he's known for was his experiment with electricity. Maida Glass, who was an author of one of the biographies I read on Benjamin Franklin, explained that he wanted to prove that lightning was a form of electricity. So he ended up taking a kite, putting a metal rod on the top of the kite, most of us know the story, putting a key at the string at the bottom of the kite, and it did indeed conduct electricity when he was in the middle of a lightning storm. It actually shocked him when he tried to touch the key, which proved his theory on electricity coming from lightning. And this led to his first invention, which was the lightning rod. The lightning rod itself saved many houses from burning down. He spent a lot of his, most of his adult life in Philadelphia, and a lot of houses burned down from things like lightning and what houses burned down from. And when he created the lightning rod, you could put it on top of a roof, and it would attract lightning, which would send the electricity down a wire and into the ground, safely, alleviating the situation of houses catching fire. And also, another great invention he was known for, which you may not know of, was the Franklin stove, also known as an iron wood stove. In Philadelphia, like I said, where he lived, during the winters, and all the houses happened to have fireplaces, and fireplaces weren't that great at heating up the entire house. Heat that would be emitted from the fireplace would escape through the chimneys, and Benjamin decided to experiment with an ironwood stove, which was a box that he actually placed into the fireplace, and you would start your fire in there, and it would radiate heat throughout the entire house. And in Philadelphia, it was growing in the 1700s very fast, and wood was something that was hard to come by. It ended up being very expensive, and this mechanism, this invention, it helped to, it only needed some wood, not a lot of wood to use. And secondly, Benjamin Franklin contributed to society with some of his civic improvements that he helped to organize, like the library, the public library that we know of today. Callan, who is another author, in one of the biographies I was reading, she ended up explaining a little bit about how books were extremely expensive, and most of them were imported from England at the time. And so Benjamin Franklin decided to come up with a book club called the Junto, where it was a book club. People would come and meet and talk about books, and instead of having people buying new books constantly, he thought, well, hey, let's make a place for these books. Let's let everyone borrow them whenever you get done reading them. And so they started trying to do that, charging a little bit of money to for these books, which they used to replenish the stock by getting new books with that money. And that was the beginning of the public library. It caught on real fast throughout the other colonies. They wanted to do the same thing. Another civic improvement was the fire brigade. Like I said before, in Philadelphia, houses burning down was a huge problem. They would catch fire and there was no hope for them. So Pamela Rushdie, another author, to another biography on Ben, mentioned that Ben helped to alleviate this problem by setting up the first fire brigade in Philadelphia, called the Union Fire Company. Firefighters actually were volunteers from the community. They trained on their own time, and they all were given a leather bucket, and they would form a line when a fire needed to be put out, and they would pass the bucket down along, known as, people called it the bucket brigade. Some of the first ideas of ever having a fire station, something to put out these fires. Finally, since I'm only mentioning a few things tonight, Ben was also interested in politics. And through his inventions and all of his accomplishments throughout life, he gained a lot of fame and was able to have a voice, really and truthfully, which helped him as a politician. People knew what he could do, they wanted to listen to him. And Rushdie mentioned that at this time, Pennsylvania was one of 13 colonies that was ruled by Britain, and many people in that time, they really didn't like that being ruled by Britain, and they wanted their own form of independence. So Ben and other important colonial leaders joined to establish a new nation, which we call the United States, of course. In 1776, Ben was among a group of people who wrote and signed the Declaration of Independence, stating why the colonies wanted to be free from British rule. And in the American Revolutionary War, where the Americans fought against the British, Ben was actually sent to France because he had great negotiating skills, the fame to back him up. He was able to negotiate a little bit because he needed help to win this war. And in the end, France ended up helping by giving us soldiers, guns, and money that we needed to win the war, which we in turn did do, which won us our independence as a separate nation. Ben also helped to draw up a treaty of peace with Britain, and when he came back to America, he continued to serve his country. He really did, and helped along the way in writing the Constitution of the United States. So, in conclusion, Benjamin Franklin invented many things. These civic improvements that he helped to organize through becoming a politician, he contributed largely to his country. It was all he was eager to do. He was eager to work to benefit others and to benefit our country. So whenever we live out our daily lives, it's easy to see Ben's little imprint here and there in things that we touch and places we go, and of course the independence that we want to share with each other.